Yes, yeah, why not? So yeah, this is Mark this time. Thank you very much, Mark, for doing this. You know, this is University of Auckland and also University of South Australia, because Mark is affiliated with both. And Mark is, as I said in my introduction, is he initiated that whole ARIVE consortium, and so now this is talk about empathic computing. Over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you very much. It's good to be here virtually. So I'm going to talk about empathic computing, and really what I'm talking about is communication. So communication is a really fundamental desire of most people. There's this really great quote from John Pearce that says, communication is not only the essence of being human, but a vital property of life. And so, of course, over the last few thousands of years, we've had a wide range of different technology for communication, dating all the way back to cave paintings and clay tablets, to the modern communication with mobile phones and social networks and social media. And in my opinion, there are kind of three trends happening with communication. One is towards more improved content capture. So on the bottom right hand side, you see a Rico 360 theta. So that means now instead of capturing and sharing faces, you can capture whole places and stream them. The second is towards more increased network bandwidth. When I first started using computers, I was using a 2400 baud modem to dial up, and now in my apartment in Auckland, I have a gigabit fiber connection, so it's really super fast bandwidth. And then the third is implicit understanding. So we've got machines now that can look at our bodies and recognize when we're making certain gestures, or we can push a button on our phones and they can understand our speech. So these are some modern communication trends. And so these three areas kind of overlap, natural communication, experience capture, implicit understanding, and they all overlap in this space that we call empathic computing. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So what is empathic computing? Well, most of you know what empathy is. Alfred Adler, the psychologist, said that empathy is being able to see with the eyes of another, listen with the ears of another, and feel with the heart of another. So empathic computing is basically building systems that enable you to understand, better understand other people and their circumstances. So there's really three elements. So first of all, understanding, so systems that can understand your feelings and emotions. Secondly, experiencing, so systems that help you better experience the world of others. And then sharing, so systems that help you better share the experience with others. And different technology can help with each of these. So for example, with systems that can understand your feelings and emotion, really this is really about building really good senses and experiencing. Virtual reality is a really great technology for being able to experience a pre-recorded or a created or modeled environment of somebody else. And sharing, in our lab, we're looking at how we can use augmented reality to help share the experience of other people. So I want to talk about the first two elements first of all, and then most of the talk I'll talk about the sharing element. So understanding. So about 20 years ago, Ros Picard at the MIT Media Lab developed the notion of effective computing, and this is basically systems that could help recognize emotion. And you can see her there wearing a glove that has a flashing light on it. This light responds to her galvanic skin response. So as she gets more excited, the light flashes more. And so this is a very simple example of a system that recognizes her level of excitement and can transmit to somebody else with a flashing light. But a more fun example is this example from Jun Rekimoto. So he built appliances that make you happy. So the idea is to combine smile detection with smart appliances. And so I'll fast forward this, but this is the video he made showing that. Oh, actually, that's not a video. Huh. Okay, it looks like I forgot to embed the video, so I have to describe it. Basically, you can see in this picture here, there's a woman who's smiling at a mirror, and the mirror has a camera in the back of it, and it recognizes when she's smiling, and it can smile back. But the funny thing that he did, though, was he basically wanted to build systems that forced you to act happy, and this was based on William James's theory that if you act happy, then you'll feel happy. So he connected the smile detector to a fridge that had a magnetic lock on the door. And so you could open the door of the fridge normally, but it would take a lot of effort because it has a magnetic lock. But when you smiled at the fridge, then it would unlock the lock and you could open the door very easily. So it's a very kind of silly but humorous example of using effective computing to improve your behavior. And I'm sorry that the video's not embedded. I must have forgotten to add that one. So the second example is about experiencing other people's situations. So virtual reality is a really great tool for doing that. And Noni De La Pena, who's a famous virtual reality artist, she said that virtual reality offers a whole different medium to tell stories that really connect people and create an empathic connection. And she's been using virtual reality to build these types of experiences. So on the left, for example, she took some footage from the BBC of a bomb going off in a marketplace in Syria, and she made a VR recreation of that. So you could go into VR in the marketplace and you'd hear the sounds of people selling food and everybody's happy. And then a bomb would go off and you'd see the smoke and destruction and there'll be some dead people, and it was really quite disturbing. But she did that because most people don't have the experience of being in a terrorist attack like that. But through VR, you can have that experience and you can understand a bit more what it's like to live in countries like that. And then on the right-hand side, she's another project called Project Homeless, where she took the audio of people waiting in a food bank line in Los Angeles, and then she made a virtual reality reconstruction of that, so you could basically stand in line and hear what other people were saying. So in both these examples, they're using virtual reality to play back a pre-recorded experience. So there's a lot of research that's been done in the areas of affective computing and in virtual reality, using virtual reality for storytelling and for empathic experiences. But what we're trying to do in our lab is try to develop systems that enable us to share what we're seeing, hearing, and feeling with other people in real time. And it turns out there's been almost nobody's done research in that area, so it's a pretty great area to be doing work in. So let me give you some examples. You could imagine, using some magic technology, maybe in 5 years' time or 10 years' time when they have the Olympics, you could have a mountain biker that's going down the side of a hill, and we're able to capture their surroundings in some way and stream them to somebody else who's sitting on the couch at home, and not only their surroundings, but also stream some of their physiological information, so that I get the feeling what it's like to ride down the hill on the mountain bike, and also get the understand what the rider's going through. Or maybe at a concert, I could remote attend a big concert, and I could feel what it's like to be in the crowd and see and hear what the crowd is seeing and hearing. So it changes the nature of the collaboration. So we've been trying to do projects like that, and they really involve three key pieces of technology. So one is sharing viewpoints and being able to look through the eyes of another person, really, and environment capture, so being able to capture what the other person's seeing, and also to some extent recognizing and sharing emotions as well. So I'm going to run through some examples of these, and then I'll also talk a little bit about some of the research challenges at the end. So first of all, sharing viewpoints. There's been quite a lot of research done on how you can use wearable cameras to share your view with somebody else, going back 20 or more years. This is one of the systems that we built. So you have a person who's wearing smart glasses with a depth sensor camera on them. And as they look around, they can live stream the video from the glasses to a remote person. The remote person can then draw on the video, and those drawings will appear back in this person's real environment. Oh, that's not playing either. Huh, I wonder what's wrong with my, hang on a minute. I wonder if I have any of my videos loaded. That would be really, no, they're not. That's really bad. Okay, if you just give me a second. I think I was too smart and copied over. It's okay, I have another backup presentation. Sorry about this. Okay. Right, let's see. At least I've got a few slides here, and I can go to the rest of them. So in this slide here, you can see on the right-hand side, there's the remote expert view drawing on the video. On the left-hand side, you'll see that annotation appearing fixed in space. So this is a very basic example of being able to share somebody else's view. Can you see that slide okay? I guess so. Nobody sees anything? That's great, good. So, but one of the problems with that is that when people are wearing the camera on their head, they've really only got a limited field of view. So what you want to do is have a camera with a very wide field of view so you can see more of the remote location. When you do that, it becomes harder to know when the other person's looking. So a couple of years ago, we did a project where we combined together eye tracking with the camera and the glasses, and also a special pair of glasses called effective wear glasses that would share your face expression. And so the goal of this basically was to enable you to share some of the implicit cues you have in face-to-face conversation, like in gaze and face expression. So we put this together in this package here, and you can see on the left-hand side all the technology, and we built an eye gaze pointer and remote pointing. And on the right-hand side, you can see what the remote expert sees on their desktop. The most important thing is the green dot here, which is the pointer of the remote person, and then the red dot here, which is the eye gaze of the person wearing the system. So this means now that the remote person can see where the other person is looking, and that changes the nature of collaboration. And in particular, it makes it so you have these more implicit cues for remote collaboration. And I can go and play the video for this. And what you see here is a person arranging some blocks on a table, and he's live streaming his view to a remote person on the laptop. And then the remote person on the laptop is able to move their mouse around and can point at objects, and they can tell whether or not the other person is paying attention, because the red pointer will follow the green pointer when they're paying attention, because they're looking at their point of interest. So it changes the nature of the collaboration, because people always look at objects before they interact with them. So by doing this, we can now see if the person is paying attention to us and engaging in the conversation, as opposed to other examples where you've got to point at something and say something and then have watch them do something. But one of the problems with that, though, is that we've still only got a 2D camera on our head, so we can still only see one direction, and that means the remote person's view is slave to your view. So a little while ago, we started the Shared Sphere project where you can live stream 360 video, and this on this video clip here, you'll see on the left-hand side a person wearing the 360 camera with the AR glasses, and we can live stream the video of just a person in VR. And we also have hand tracking enabled in VR, so the person in VR can wave their hands in front of their face and can stream the hand gestures back the other way. And then person in AR will see these ghost hands floating in space in front of them. And of course now the people can look in different directions because they're showing a 360 video, so that means that we have to show where they're looking. And so we have these green and red frames where they're showing where each person's looking. So here's the video of this system. In this case, it's a collaboration with a power company. And when he's looking at this very complicated power control panel, and he's able to use the remote person to help him operate the panel. So in his headset, he sees this ghost hands, and he can see the drawing annotations of the person and annotating onto the real world. And these annotations appear fixed in the real world. And then there's that green square there, which shows where the remote person is looking. And of course, we live stream the 360 video to the remote person. So here's Gunn standing in the video. And for him, he looks around and sees a 360 video, and he feels like he's really standing alongside his partner and helping him perform this task. And then he can draw on the video like this. One of the problems with this, of course, is that you've only got video, so you can't really walk through the space. You can only look at it, and so you don't get a true sense of space. So what we've done most recently is looked at how you can combine together multiple 3D depth sensors and use that to create a live 3D mesh of the real world. And then the person inside VR can actually walk through that space and feel like they're part of the space. So here we fused together a 3D point cloud. And the way that could be used, we could take a tripod with a handheld with a small sensor on it, put it into a room, and then we could live scan that room in real time and send it to a remote VR environment. And if anything changes in the room, like somebody walks into it, or if an object's moved, that's all updated in real time. So you see a video of that here. On the right-hand side is the first-person view, the left-hand side is the God's eye perspective. And you can see this is a corner of our lab, and there's persons looking around, and you'll see in a minute a person coming in on the left. You can see them just now. And as they walk into the space, we can see a 3D point cloud of their body. You'll see a couple of problems. One is that there's a lot of blue places, and this is where the cameras can't see. And also the table, the white table in front, is supposed to be nice and flat, and it's got a nice wave going through it. And this is because our cameras aren't properly calibrated quite. So there's still some work to be done. But this shows an example of being able to have a cluster of depth sensors in the ceiling and capturing everything that goes below it. You could also, you can use that in many different ways, for example. So now there's another example of being able to scan the real world and have a local worker, having a remote worker work with them. And of course, our goal is basically to have technology in 5 or 10 years' time that will be really small and handheld. And as I walk into a space, I could immediately scan the space and live stream the space remotely. You could also, let me just pause this video for a second. Instead of having the cameras in the middle looking out, so inside out, you could also have outside in. So in this case here, we've got cameras placed around a table, and on the right-hand side is the 3D point cloud of that table surface. On the left-hand side is a view through the Magic Leap AR display. And what you'll see is the person on the right in VR is going to indicate an object in the real world, and you'll see a ghost hand appearing over that object. And then they'll tell the person in the real world to move the object over to another place in the table. And you'll see the person in the real world pick the object up, move it. And when they do that, it disappears from the virtual environment, and it comes back again in the VR, and they place it back on the table. So here you can see them pointing at this yellow object. You can see the blue ghost hands, and the person in the real world will then pick the object up. It disappears from the right-hand side, and they put it back on the table, and it appears again. And the person can tell them which way around to put the object, and they can see it being moved in the right location with the point cloud as well. So you could use the technology we developed to capture either outside in or inside out. So what you've seen here is an evolution going from 2D video to 360 video to 3D space capture. And this produces an increased immersion and improved scene understanding and much better collaboration. Now you can both feel it in the same space. Now I'm going to swap back to my other slides, and hopefully that I have some videos in some of those other slides as well. Otherwise that would be really sad. That one's not, oh my goodness. I feel really, okay. Well, I think I've got these two videos in the first one. Oh dear, I'm really sorry about this. I should have checked before when I put the slides together. I just drag and dropped, and I assumed it was all going to be just fine. I think I have some videos here. I can show that. Yes, okay. So that's really bad. So once you've got the ability to scan the space, then you could also do some more interesting types of collaboration. So one thing you can do is collaboration between VR and AR. So you can have a person in the real world who sees a virtual collaborator appearing beside them as a kind of virtual ghost, and then you can have another, and that person who's beside them in his real ghost is a person who's in a VR copy of the real world. And once you've got that VR copy, you can provide some additional communication cues. So this slide here shows on the slide A, it shows the common communication cues. We're using heads of people with virtual hands. But on slide C, you'll see that we have these pyramid shapes appearing out of their faces, which are their fields of view. So normally in a face-to-face conversation, you normally don't see the gaze point or the field of view of the other person unless you're looking at their face. But in VR, you could always show that. So that means you can know where somebody's looking even if they're not in the view. So in this case, we used a collaboration between somebody in the real world and somebody in the VR HTC Vive. and we did a large room scale tracking. So you can see here the reconstruction. So left is the real lab space, and the right is a reconstructed. This is not live reconstruction. We did this a while ago, and we did it using a number of pictures. It took a while. And then this is what you see in the AR case. This is your partner who's in VR, and you can see the lines coming out of their face. That's their view frustrum. And again, this is in VR, so that then your partner again is in AR now, and you can see the lines coming out of their face. And we did an experiment to see whether or not showing that view frustrum helped you perform a task much faster. So we had a number of different conditions with the view frustrum or without the view frustrum. And this is what it looks like inside the VR environment. You can see where your partner's looking, even though they're not in view, because you can see that pyramid. And now here's the partner coming into view. And in this case, the goal was to look at boxes together and try and find the right boxes that had a special code on them. And then you both had to look at the same box. So you could tell where your partner was looking because you could see that view frustrum. And so we found that showing that communication cue was enabled you to perform a task much better. Of course, once you've got that copy of the real world, you don't need to just keep the people at the same scale. So you could also do a multi-scale collaboration. So in this case, you could have somebody's body that's scaled up to be really big or shrunk down to be very small. You can imagine how this might be useful if you were doing a collaboration with multiple people, where like if you're the firefighter chief and you wanted to have a copy of the real building that your fire crew are going into, and then you want to be able to make yourself really big so you can see little virtual people going inside the building as they're exploring it. So we explored that a little bit as well. And we can also, of course, because you're both got virtual bodies, you could snap into the same, or the VR person could snap into the AR person's body and see the world from the same perspective. So this video here shows two people collaborating together at normal scale between AR and VR. And then what they're doing is dropping cubes and cylinders into space. And then what the person does is make themselves really big. And so now they can look down, they're 10 times as big as their partner. And when their partner looks up, they see this giant head looking down at them. And this gives the person a very good God's eye perspective over the whole environment. And then you could also shrink yourself down really small, and you could then explore the nooks and crannies and the small parts of a model that you couldn't see if you're the regular size. So you'll see him going down to 1:1. Now he's going to shrink himself even smaller to 1/10 the body scale. So now he's going very small, and you can look up and see the giant head of this collaborator looking at him, and they can then do object placement there as well. So because you've got a virtual copy of the real world, then you can change your body scale and do interesting things with that virtual copy. One of the other things we did was looking at how you could separate out communication cues. So in the real world, on the left-hand side, you can see here two people, well, they're in VR, but they're looking at a common scene. And the person in the coat there, she can see the man's hand gestures, so she knows exactly what he's pointing at. But on the right-hand side, you can see now she's turned around and the man's behind her, and she can't see his face and his hands anymore. So we want to explore how you could convey communication cues when you couldn't see the person's face or body anymore. And so what we came up with is this idea of what we call the mini-me, where you could basically take a miniature version of yourself and use that to convey communication cues that were always in view. And so in this case, you have the person in AR, and when she looks away from her partner and she can't see his virtual body anymore, we attach a little miniature guy onto her gaze, and the miniature person mimics the actions of the person in life size. So for example, still points at the same objects, and they still have gaze and gestures that mimic the gaze and gestures of the large avatar. So the idea is to be able to show the communication cues even when you can't see the person. And this is kind of important because with many AR displays, they have a limited field of view. So actually it's quite hard to keep the other avatar in view when you're looking around, because the field of view of that display is quite small. And then of course the person may move out of your view as well. So I'll fast forward this a little bit. And is it playing? It's not playing. Let me see here. Oops, sorry about that. Let me start playing it, and I'll fast forward. Okay. So it's talking now about collaboration using HoloLens and the issue of being able to see your partner in the limited field of view. And also sometimes you have the ability to teleport around the room and you lose sight of your partner in that case as well. So you can see on the left-hand side the AR view, the right-hand side the VR view. This is the issue with the limited field of view. They can look at objects on the table. When they see objects on the table, they can't really see their partner anymore. So what we did is with the mini-me is when you look around, you can see now the mini-me coming into view. This little person here appears, and we keep that person in your view wherever you look. So she's looking at these boxes, and the person's still staying there, even though the her partner's behind her. The little miniature guy stays in front of him, or in front of her, and still provides that same communication indication. And then when she turns back to see her partner, that disappears. So she's looking at her partner there, and when she looks away, then the mini-me appears, and you can see he's pointing at the same spot on the whiteboard as the other one was. So this is an interesting way to be able to convey communication cues even when you can't see your partner. And I wanted to show another video, and I'll have to see if I can find it. So I'm really sorry about this, but maybe I can describe it first of all, and then yeah, two other videos. This one's not there either. Boy, it's really terrible. So this video is called "On the Shoulders of the Giant," and in this case, what we've done is kind of similar to the mini-me, but what you'll see here on the right-hand side is you'll see this lady is wearing a head-mount display, and she's holding a Vive or a tracker, and on the Vive tracker is the avatar of the remote person she's collaborating with. And then what she can do is she can move that tracker around and position the avatar of the person so they can collaborate on physical tasks. So if she's and you'll see this in the video, if she's looking at a PC she's trying to fix, and she positions him so he can see inside the PC and help her with the fixing. And then also on that avatar is a little gaze cue so she can see where he's looking. So let me just see if I can find that video, and I can show you that one as well. And I believe I think it's in this one here, but let me see. Oh, and what I could do is I can show you, well, I'll maybe do it later. I can show you the video now from, here we go. Should be it here, hopefully. Yes, okay. So what you'll see here is the lady holding a miniature person in their hand, and on the bottom right is the perspective from their perspective. And so as she moves his avatar around, he gets to see the real world from different perspectives, and she's basically controlling his position while his head orientation is controlling the orientation of the viewpoint. So he can still keep on looking around in the VR environment, but she gets to move him where she wants to move him. So this is another advantage of having different body scale. And then we did a little study to see whether or not adding the view frustrum like this helped or not. So we had a condition where we had the avatar only, we had a view frustrum only, we had an avatar plus a view frustrum, and no visualization at all of the person and when they did the task. And then we also looked at how we could mount this on your body, so you could take it on and off the body. And there were some other techniques in terms of rotating the person independently or dependently. Turns out people get really sick when you rotate them around too much. So in that study we found that providing the view function was really important to provide that communication cue, and letting the person have an independent 3 degree of freedom view was much more important as well. So I wanted to go, there's one more video I wanted to show you as well to see if I can find it. I'm not quite sure where it is. Let's see. Maybe, no, it's not that one. Oh, I think it's in here. Let's see if this is going to be. Oh no, I think it's here actually. Yeah, I think this is it here. No, it's not here. Well, I can describe it, and then I will have to. Yeah. So one of the other projects we did was about sharing VR experiences. So I gave the example at the beginning of the mountain bike about biking down the hill of the mountain, and being able to share their view with a remote person. So that's technically quite hard to do now, although with enough technology you could probably do it. But one way to see what the experience might be like is you can reproduce it inside VR. So we created a shared VR experience where you've got one person who's playing a game, and then we can stream the view of that person to a remote person who's an observer. And initially when we did it, we slaved the views together. So the second person who's observing would see exactly what the person who was playing the game would see. The problem with that is that they got really sick really quickly because the player was turning the head around, the person observing wasn't moving, and so then they got really sick. So then we changed it so that the person was the observer just changed their orientation, and the player changed the body position. So it's a little bit like the On the Shoulders of a Giant, but now we've got people in VR rather than the real world. And what we also did is we had these things called empathic gloves, which were able to measure the person's heart rate, and then you could measure the player's heart rate, and the observer would get to experience that heart rate in some ways. So we had a number of different VR environments. We had a butterfly world, which is very calming, a zombie attacking, which is a really scary environment. And we would take the heart rate from one person, the player, and share it back with the other person. And what we found by doing that was that the person who was observing, if the player was getting excited, they also started getting excited as well. And we were able to artificially elevate their heart rate. And we also did a follow-on study where we took the heart rate of the player and we artificially sped it up. And then we created the same effect in the observer as well. We could speed it up by about 20% or slow it down by about 20% without the other person noticing. So that validated to some extent the ability of enabling one person to feel what the other person was feeling. So I wanted to show you a couple more slides, which I think are back in this presentation here. Yes. So what I've shown you so far is the ability to use AR and VR for empathic computing, where you've got VR systems are really ideal for trying different experiences out. And you can do things like change your body scale representation, and AR is really good for live sharing. So, you know, I showed examples of live sharing gaze cues and annotations, things like that. So what's happening in the future? Well, there's many different technology trends that we all know about. For example, trends to more advanced displays with wider field of view, ability to capture and share spaces using natural hand gestures or eye tracking. And one of the things that we're really excited about is the ability to capture physiological cues and to share those. So you can see the woman down the bottom here is wearing a head-mount display. It has EEG on it, so we can measure brain activity. And there's a number of commercial companies now that are starting to sell attachments or EEG headsets, EEG systems that fit inside VR headsets. Here's one, for example, called the Lucid Link, and this is just a foam pad you can fit inside your HTC Vive. But inside the pad, there's 6 electrodes that measure brain activity on the front of the brain. And so there's another one called the Next Mind, which is basically the same thing, but that can clip on the back of your headset. So there's a person here wearing the Magic Leap with some electrodes on the back of the head. And this is a video of a person playing a game, and as he looks around, he just has to concentrate, and he can shoot these aliens just by thinking about shooting them. So we're really excited about using these things to be able to build virtual environments that respond to your brain activity. And you can imagine how you can combine this together, you know, the advanced displays, the real-time space capture, gesture, eye tracking, and emotion sensing and sharing into something you might call empathic teleexistence, where the idea is that people move from being an observer to being a participant, and the communication changes from explicit communication to more implicit communication, here a more experiential experience of doing things together. So one of the things that we've been exploring recently is looking at brain synchronization. And it turns out that when people do physical tasks, you can measure their brain activity, and sometimes the phase of the brain activity comes into sync. And when that happens, people feel like they're more connected, and they are perform better together, and they learn better together. And one of the tasks is finger pointing. So you can sit across the table from somebody, point a finger at them, and as you move your finger around, the other person's finger can move. If it moves in sync with you, then you get this brain synchronization. So we decided to explore that inside VR. So you can see the top here, the person doing a finger pointing task. At the bottom, there's the same task inside VR, and with an avatar. So what you see happening, first of all, in the real world, this is a heat map of the brain activity, and you can see the black dots are where the electrodes are. And this is before you start doing anything, so nothing's happening. This is while you're doing the finger pointing, and you can see a couple of loops appearing. This means that those two dots are in phase. And then you do the pointing activity for about a minute, and then you stop and you just keep pointing at the other person. And when you do that, you see something like this. So now, even though you're not moving your hands anymore, you've got a lot of connections between the electrodes across the skull. And it shows that these two brains are now in sync. So we've been doing some studies along the same lines, and we've first of all been able to reproduce that activity in the real world. So we can show that there's a significant difference in beta frequency of brain activity and theta frequency of brain activity before and after a finger tracking task. And then we did it inside the VR. So you can see in the VR here, we've got the finger of a avatar moving around, and and the other person can follow their fingertip. And we've been trying to see if we can reproduce that same brain synchronization activity. And what we found is that we can indeed, and I think there's a slide showing that next. But one of the interesting things about the VR is that you can, of course, change the viewpoint. So in this case, we've got two people now inhabiting the same virtual body. And the theory is that by changing the viewpoint and having both people inside the same body, because you'll have the same perceptual cues, you may increase that brain synchronization even further. And so we've been able to, in the face-to-face setting, we've been able to find we do get an increase in brain synchronization, but it's in a different band. It's in the theta band of the brain activity, which is normally, or sorry, alpha band, which is normally associated with arousal and novelty. So we're not quite sure if that's because people are doing VR for the first time, or if because there's an actual effect there. And then when we have that shared viewpoint, we can indeed see the beta band frequency increasing in VR as well. Although in the theta activity, which previously we saw go up, it goes down now. So we're not quite sure what's happening there. So we need to do some more exploration. And this might be used to create new types of shared experiences. So this is an example of one of those. This is what we call the neural drum or hyperdrum. And this is where you can you play music with somebody. And as you're playing with the other person, then when you start playing in sync with them, you get more visual feedback, and which is designed to help synchronize you even more. And it creates a much better playing experience. So I'll play this and you can see it working. So in this case, you have some people both wearing VR headsets. They have drumsticks, and they can just drum on regular objects. And then
Neural drum is a VR drumming experience.
In their headsets, they can see a see-through video of the other person, but there's also 6 electrodes across the front measuring the brain activity in the front of the brain. And when that activity starts synchronizing together, then we change the transparency of the video and make it and add more visual effects. So it becomes a richer visual experience. So you can see the setup here. We're basically using the open BCI, open source electrodes to measure brain activity, and then you Bluetooth that over to the computer, and then you use that to drive the VR experience.
The phase locking value, which is an index of neural synchronicity
So
for the FP1 and FP2 channels of the theta band from both the participants. When synchronization between 2 players is low, the camera will be more clear to do so, whereas when synchronization is high, the vision becomes more obscured, with each point cloud eliciting higher particle effects. We logged and analyzed the user's brain signals, as well as had them answer a subjective questionnaire regarding their perception of synchronicity with their partner, and the overall experience during a pilot study. We discussed design implications to further improve neural drum in our paper.
Oops, sorry. So that's pretty much what I want to show. Apologies again for the bad video or lack of video in my slides. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I guess it's a good lesson to always check your slides before you show them. But in general, what I've been talking about today is this trend in communications technology towards empathic computing, to be able to understand what people are doing, to be able to better share experiences and share each other's feelings. And then using AR and VR, we can create these empathic experiences where we can change people's perspectives, we can share space experience, and we can support communication cues that we wouldn't normally have. But there are many, many directions for future research. So as I said, in our group, we've started looking at EEG and brain synchronization. We've also looked at how to represent emotional connections. So with the heart rate sharing inside VR, we did some research on being able to have haptic feedback. And so when you're holding the VR controller starts to pulse in time with your heart, and what connection does that provide. And there's also research about the visual richness of the characters you're sharing as well, and how to scale up what we're doing to many, many users. So I'd be happy to answer questions now. If you want my contact details, they're here. And again, apologies for the mix up with my videos. So I think we've got a few minutes now for questions.
Thank you very much, Mark.